People say the hardest part about losing someone is learning to live without them, but that's not true. The hardest part is discovering the truth they tried to tell you when they no longer had time left. I learned that on the night my adoptive father died. I was standing beside his hospital bed, holding his hand, counting the seconds between his breaths, because every one felt like a step closer to the end I didn't want to reach. The room smelled like disinfectant, and something heavier, something like the weight of goodbye. Machines beeped softly, nurses walked quietly past the door. The window showed a city full of lights, but in that room, it felt like only darkness existed. Thad squeezed my hand weakly, a tiny pressure, barely there, like the last flicker of a candle. I leaned closer. "Dad? I'm here," I whispered. "I'm right here." His lips moved, but no sound came out. His breaths were shallow, scattered, as if his lungs were searching for a reason to stay. A nurse noticed the movement and gently stepped closer. "She's trying to say something," she said softly. "Let me help." She placed a small notepad in his trembling hand and guided his fingers with hers. He took a long, painful breath and scratched something onto the paper, crooked, shaky, as if every letter cost him a piece of himself. Then he looked at me, one last time. Not with fear, not with regret, but with something I didn't understand yet. He exhaled and didn't inhale again. Time didn't stop, but I did. My knees almost buckled. A sound left me, not a cry, something deeper, like grief tearing its way out of my chest. I didn't let go of his hand until the nurse gently touched my shoulder. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. "He wanted you to have this." She pressed the small notepad into my palm. The paper was warm from his fading touch. I wiped my face, took a shaky breath, and looked down at the last words my father ever struggled to write. 7 words. 7 words that changed everything. "Don't trust her. She never wanted you." I read it again, and again, and again. Each time my heartbeat grew louder. "Don't trust her. She never wanted you." I didn't understand at first. Who was her? A neighbor? A relative? Someone in the hospital? Or... No, it couldn't be. But the thought crept in anyway, slow and cold, like a shadow crawling up my spine. What if he meant my mom? The woman who raised me, the woman who tucked me in, the woman who kissed my forehead every morning, the woman who loved me, didn't she? A nurse came in to remove the machines. Another came to prepare the body. I stepped back mechanically, holding the notepad so tightly the paper wrinkled under my fingers. A single thought pulsed in my mind. Why would he say this now? I walked out of the room, not because I wanted to, but because everything inside me was collapsing. The hallway lights were too bright. People moved around me, talking, laughing, living, while my world was falling apart, quietly, invisibly. Mom was sitting in the waiting room, hands clasped together, staring at the floor. She looked up as I approached. Her eyes were red, but dry. She didn't look like someone who had lost a husband. She looked like someone who had been waiting. "Sweetheart," she whispered, "is he gone?" I nodded. She stood up slowly and wrapped her arms around me. I froze. It was the first time in my life her hug felt wrong. Her warmth didn't feel comforting. It felt suspicious, like I was hugging someone I didn't fully know. Her breath touched my ear. "We'll get through this," she whispered. "You and me, okay?" For a moment, I almost believed her. Almost. Until I remembered the note in my pocket. I stepped back and forced a nod. "I need some air." She nodded sympathetically. "Of course. Take your time." I walked outside the hospital doors and into the cold night air. Cars passed, people talked, life moved on, but I stood there, frozen, with the note shaking in my hand, as if it were alive, as if it could speak the words my father didn't get to say. I read it again. "Don't trust her. She never wanted you." My hands trembled, my breath quickened, and for the first time in my life, I realized I didn't know who my mother really was. I didn't know what she hid. I didn't know why my father would use his final breath to warn me about the woman who raised me. But deep down, something inside me whispered, he didn't lie. Something was wrong. Something had always been wrong. I just never saw it, until now. The streetlight flickered above me, casting a long shadow behind my feet, as if the darkness of the truth was stretching itself toward me. I gripped the paper tighter. Whatever this note meant, whatever truth he wanted me to know, one thing was certain. My life, my identity, my childhood, none of it was what I thought. And my mother, the woman waiting inside, was no longer the woman I thought she was. This wasn't just the end of my father's life. It was the beginning of the truth he died trying to tell me. The night after my father died felt too long for a single night. It felt like a week, a month, a lifetime, stretching endlessly in front of me like a hallway with no doors. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, listening to the house breathe around me. Every creak felt louder, every shadow felt darker, every memory felt heavier. And on the nightstand beside me, the note he left sat like a wound that wouldn't close. "Don't trust her. She never wanted you." I repeated the words in my mind until they didn't even sound like words anymore, just sharp pieces of something broken. I kept asking myself the same questions. Why would he write that? Who did he mean? What was he trying to warn me about? But each time I came back to the same terrifying possibility. What if he meant Mom? I turned onto my side, trying to quiet the storm inside my head, but my mind wouldn't let me rest. Instead, it pulled me backwards, into memories I hadn't thought about in years. I remembered a night when I was 8 years old. Dad had taken me to the park after school, just the two of us. Mom stayed home. She said she wasn't feeling well. We swung on the swings, we ran in the grass. Dad bought me a strawberry ice pop and made me laugh so hard I almost dropped it. But what I remembered most was the way he looked at me that night, like he was memorizing me. On the drive home, I asked him why he looked sad. He smiled softly and said, "Sometimes, when you love someone too much, you get scared of losing them." At the time, I didn't understand. Now it haunted me, because maybe that love was what pushed him to write those last words. Maybe he had been scared for a long, long time. The sky outside my window began to shift from black to gray, the kind of color the world turns when it hasn't decided whether it wants to start the day. I finally sat up, my body heavy and stiff, and looked at the clock. 5:47 a.m. Mom would be awake soon. The thought of facing her sent a cold ripple through me. I needed time. I needed space. I needed answers. But mostly, I needed to understand the father I thought I knew. I picked up the note again, running my fingers across the shaky handwriting. Dad had always had neat handwriting, steady, strong. But these words looked different, almost desperate. I pressed the paper against my chest, closed my eyes, and let the tears come. Not the loud sobs from the hospital. These were quieter, tired, exhausted. The kind of tears you cry when you've been carrying questions you were never supposed to carry. The house smelled like coffee. It always did. Mom woke up at 6 a.m. sharp every single morning. I walked into the kitchen and found her sitting at the table with a half-finished mug in front of her. Her hair was tied back, a little messier than usual. Her eyes were red, but not swollen, not puffy. She looked composed, too composed. She looked up when she heard me. "Good morning," she whispered. "Morning." She studied my face for a second, in a way she didn't normally do. "You didn't sleep," she said softly. "No, you didn't either." She shrugged. "I'm doing what I can." Her voice was gentle, perfectly gentle. The kind of gentle that should have comforted me, but it didn't. Something in her sounded rehearsed, like she'd practiced it in the mirror before I came downstairs. I sat across from her and reached for the note in my pocket. I didn't pull it out yet. I just felt the edges of it against my fingertips, folded and fragile. Mom reached out and gently touched the back of my hand. "You don't have to pretend with me," she whispered. "You can cry, you know. You don't have to be strong." Her kindness almost broke me, but something in her eyes held me back, something unreadable. "I know," I whispered. I don't know what to feel." She nodded slowly. "It's confusing," she murmured. "Losing someone you love. It never makes sense." The kettle whistled in the background. She stood and walked over to turn it off, her movements smooth, practiced, normal. I watched her carefully. She was calm, steady, almost empty. She didn't look like a woman who had lost her husband of 23 years. She looked like someone who had been expecting it, almost waiting. That realization made my skin tighten. She poured more hot water into her cup and stirred it slowly. Too slowly. I finally found the courage. "Mom?" I whispered. She turned, her spoon still in the mug. "Yes?" I swallowed hard and pulled the note from my pocket. Her eyes flicked to it instantly, and something changed in her face. Not shock, not confusion, relief. A dark, quiet kind of relief, like she had been waiting for this moment. I placed it on the table between us. Her hand tightened on the spoon. "Where did you get that?" she whispered. "You know where." Her eyes darkened. "Well," she said calmly, "so you saw it." I stared at her, heart pounding. "He wrote it before he died." Her jaw clenched. "I know." My breath hitched. "You know?" I repeated. "You've seen it before?" She nodded slowly. "I saw him writing something," she murmured. "I didn't know what it was, but yes, I had an idea." "What idea?" She sat down slowly, folded her hands on the table, and sighed through her nose. "Your father wasn't well, sweetheart. He was confused. He had been confused for a while." The way she said sweetheart felt wrong, forced, like she was trying to soften me or distract me. "My father was fine," I said quietly. "He was sharp. He knew what he was saying." "No," she said firmly, "he didn't. And you need to understand that." Her voice sharpened, not loud, but controlled. Too controlled. "Mom," I said carefully, "he didn't write other nonsense. He didn't say anything strange to me, just this." She closed her eyes for a moment, as if gathering patience. "People say things at the end, sweetheart. People imagine things. People fear things that aren't real." "So you're saying this isn't real?" I touched the note lightly. She hesitated. Just for a second, but long enough. "I'm saying," she whispered, "that your father loved you, and you should hold on to that, not the confused ramblings of a dying man."
My chest tightened. Who did he mean? I asked. She looked at me with a softness that didn't reach her eyes. I don't know. Another lie. I felt it in my bones. She lifted the note between two fingers, like it disgusted her, like it held something she didn't want me to see. Then she gently placed it back down. Let this go, she whispered, for your own sake. I stared at her calmness, at her lack of grief, at the thin layer of control holding her emotions like a cage. And then she looked up at me, really looked. Something cold flickered in her eyes, barely noticeable, but there. Some things, she whispered, are better left buried. A shiver ran up my spine. Her words didn't sound like advice. They sounded like a warning. Or a threat. After breakfast, I went to my father's study. Mom rarely went in there. She didn't like his clutter, his books, his papers. But I did. The study smelled like him. Paper, pine, and old coffee. It was quiet, still, peaceful. I stood in the doorway for a long time before walking toward his desk. Everything was exactly as he left it. His reading glasses, a stack of letters, a mug with the word, "World's Best Dad," fading on the side. My throat tightened. I sat in his chair and closed my eyes. Dad, what were you trying to tell me? The study felt like the last place his truth still existed. I began opening drawers, searching for anything that might explain the note. Old bills, receipts, dental forms, insurance papers. Nothing. But then, in the bottom drawer, beneath a stack of envelopes, I found a small wooden box. Dark wood, old, scratched. My fingers tingled. I lifted the latch slowly. Inside was a single photograph. A woman, standing alone in a hospital hallway. Tired eyes, red face, hair messy, like she'd been crying. And in the corner of the photo, written in my father's handwriting, "She doesn't know." My breath vanished. Who didn't know? What didn't she know? Was the woman in the photo my mother? My real mother? Suddenly, a floorboard creaked behind me. I spun around. Mom was standing in the doorway, her face pale, her expression unreadable. "How long have you been in here?" she asked softly. Her voice, too soft, too careful. I held the photo closer to my chest without thinking. She took a slow step into the room. "That box," she whispered, her eyes locked on it, "doesn't belong to you." Something in her tone made my heart hammer. Fear. Real fear. Something she didn't want me to see was inside this box. She took another step closer. "Give it to me," she whispered. Her voice wasn't motherly now. It was something else. Something darker. I stood up slowly, my breath unsteady. "No." Her eyes widened, not with surprise, with anger. A quiet, cold anger. The kind that belongs to someone who has been hiding something for a very long time. She opened her mouth to speak, but I stepped back, and for the first time in my entire life, I said the words that changed everything. "What are you hiding from me?" My adoptive mother didn't speak immediately after I asked the question that had been building inside me ever since my father took his last breath. She stood in the doorway of Dad's study, her shadow stretching across the floor, closing the space between us, even though she hadn't moved. The silence wasn't just quiet. It was thick, heavy, charged. "What am I hiding?" she repeated, her voice too calm, too level. I swallowed hard, feeling the photograph in my shaky grip. The woman in the photo, the tired eyes, the faint redness on her cheeks,
the hallway behind her. Everything about it felt unfinished, like a story paused mid-sentence. "I want answers," I said softly. "And I'm not a child anymore." She didn't blink. Not once. Her eyes dropped briefly to the box in my hands. "That," she whispered, "doesn't belong to you. It belonged to Dad, and he clearly kept it hidden for a reason." Her jaw tightened. "I'm your mother. You don't get to decide what you can and cannot see in this house." My breath caught. The tone she used, cold, sharp, controlling, was a tone I'd never heard from her before. It didn't belong to the mother who bandaged my knees when I fell off my bike. It didn't belong to the mother who read me bedtime stories and tucked me into bed. It belonged to someone else, someone who had been hiding beneath the surface for years. "I'm not giving it back," I whispered. She stared at me, not angry, not shocked, but calculating, as if she was rearranging something in her mind. Some plan that didn't involve me knowing the truth. Then she stepped inside the room, her footsteps slow and steady. "This is a difficult time, and grief makes you imagine things. You're tired, you're hurting, and now you're looking at old things that don't matter anymore." "They matter to me," I whispered. Her gaze sharpened. "Because you're making them matter." That sentence stung in a way I didn't expect. I took a shaky breath. "I found this in Dad's drawer. It must mean something." She shook her head, a soft, dismissive gesture. "He kept everything. Old receipts, broken pens, empty envelopes. You know how he was. He was sentimental about junk." "But this isn't junk. It's a picture of a woman, and he wrote something on it." Her eyes froze, just for a millisecond. But I saw it. Fear. Real fear. "What did he write?" she asked quietly. I didn't answer. I just held the photo a little tighter. She took a step closer, her voice lowering to a whisper. "Tell me what it says." I shook my head. If I told her, she'd twist it. She always managed to twist things into something harmless, something normal, something I was supposed to let go of. But not this time. Why did he hide this? Why did he hide it from you? Her expression flickered. A quick flash of something dark and exhausted. Then she looked right into my eyes and said slowly, "Because he didn't want to hurt you." "Hurt me?" I repeated. "How would this hurt me?" She opened her mouth, then closed it. And for the first time ever, she didn't have an answer. That alone told me everything. I stepped back toward the desk, intending to look through the rest of the box. But she moved quickly, much quicker than I expected. Her hand grabbed the edge of the box just as I did. We both froze, fingers pressed against the old wood, breaths sharp and heavy. "Let go," she whispered. "No." Her nostrils flared the slightest bit. "This is not a fight you want," she said. "Then tell me the truth." Her lips tightened. She pulled once more. I didn't release it. It was the first time in my whole life that I physically resisted her. Her eyes darkened. "You're grieving," she said sharply, "and you are latching onto the wrong things." "I'm latching onto the only clue Dad left," I said. She closed her eyes briefly, exhaling through her nose, as if I was a child throwing a tantrum. Then, with a voice that felt like it had been sharpened, "You're making a mistake." "No," I whispered. "I think you made the mistake. Years ago." Something snapped inside her eyes. Not anger, not guilt, panic. "You don't know what you're talking about," she whispered. "Then explain." "I can't." "You mean you won't?" Her silence confirmed it. The room felt smaller, hotter, like the walls were closing in. She stepped away suddenly, turning her back to me. For a moment, she looked almost fragile, her shoulders slightly hunched, her hands trembling at her sides. And then, her voice changed, lower, colder, like something inside her had stopped pretending. "There are things in this house you will never understand," she said quietly. "And if you keep looking, you might find something you can never undo." My blood turned cold. "What does that mean?" I asked. She didn't answer. She walked out of the room without turning around, not a single glance back, and left me standing there with a trembling heart and a wooden box that suddenly felt heavier than before. For days after that confrontation, the house didn't feel like a home anymore. Every door I opened felt forbidden. Every hallway felt too quiet. Every shadow felt like it was watching me. Mom pretended nothing happened. She cooked, cleaned, talked normally, but she watched me. Not directly, not obviously, but I could feel her eyes on me, subtly, quietly, waiting for me to slip, waiting for me to give up. But I didn't, because something in the study didn't make sense. Why was the photo hidden? Why was the woman alone in a hospital? What didn't she know? Why did Dad keep it from Mom? And why would he use his last breath to warn me about the one person I had always trusted? The note and the photo were connected. I felt that in my bones. So I went back into the study when Mom was out grocery shopping. I sat on the floor and emptied every drawer. Old albums, bank statements, unsent letters, birthday cards, junk. But nothing else from the box except that single photograph and a folded piece of paper underneath it that I hadn't noticed before. My hands shook. As I unfolded the paper, it wasn't a letter, not a document. It was a drawing, a child's drawing. A little girl with brown hair, holding hands with two adults. The woman's face was scribbled out with harsh black crayon, and beneath it, written in small, shaky handwriting, "Not her." My breath hitched. A child had drawn this. A child who didn't want the woman in the picture to be their mother. A child who erased her. Had I drawn this? Had I erased her? I tried to remember, but nothing came. Just darkness. Just silence. Just the faint echo of a memory I couldn't grasp. I folded the drawing gently and placed it beside the photo. Then I noticed something else. A faint indent on the bottom of the wooden box. I held it close to the lamp and angled it toward the light. A name, barely carved, almost hidden. 5 letters. L-I-L-Y. The breath slipped from my lungs. Lily. I didn't know a Lily. Dad never mentioned a Lily. Mom never mentioned a Lily. But the name felt familiar, strangely familiar, like a whisper I had heard in a dream but forgotten upon waking. I whispered it aloud. Lily. The air changed, as if the room recognized the name. even if I didn't. Then, footsteps. Soft, slow, approaching the study door. My heart leapt into my throat. Mom was home early. I shoved the items back into the box, closed the lid, and slid it under the desk just as the doorknob turned. Mom stepped inside. Her eyes scanned the room like she knew exactly what she would find. "What are you doing in here?" she asked. I swallowed hard. I couldn't sleep." She didn't blink, didn't soften. She just stared at me until my skin felt too tight. "You need to stop coming in here," she said quietly. "It's not healthy for you." "I'm trying to understand," I whispered. "There's nothing to understand." I didn't move. She didn't move. Then she took a slow step toward me. "Listen to me," she whispered. Some things your father left behind are not for you. They're not meant for you. And if you keep digging, you're going to ruin everything." "Everything?" I repeated. "What does that mean?" She stepped even closer. Too close. Close enough for me to feel her breath on my cheek. "Stop," she whispered. "Before you learn something, you can't unlearn." I didn't look away. Neither did she. And in that moment, I realized something terrifying. She wasn't trying to protect me. She was trying to protect herself. That night, after she went to bed, I sat in the dark study again. I took out the photograph and stared long at the woman in it. She looked so familiar, and yet so distant, like a memory I had buried long ago, but was now clawing its way back. Then I flipped the photo over. Something was faintly written in pencil. It was smudged, barely readable, but under the light, I made out the words, "She wasn't supposed to have you." A chill ran down my spine. Suddenly, Dad's last words felt heavier than ever before. "Don't trust her. She never wanted you. And now, she wasn't supposed to have you." Everything began to connect. Not clearly, not fully, but enough to know that my entire life was built on a lie. My adoptive mother had not been chosen. She had taken me. And Dad had been the only one trying to protect me from the truth. I clutched the photo to my chest, my heart pounding violently. If Mom wasn't supposed to have me, who was? And who was Lily? The truth wasn't buried. It was right in front of me. And Mom knew it. Which meant I wasn't just searching for answers. I was uncovering a secret she would do anything to keep hidden, even if it meant losing me. Perhaps she already had. For the next 3 days, I couldn't stop thinking about the name carved into the wooden box. Lily. It echoed in my head everywhere I went, in the shower, in the kitchen, in the dark silence of my room at night. Every time I whispered it aloud, it felt like my voice was reaching for someone I'd forgotten I once knew. But there was something else I noticed, something that made the hairs on my arms rise. Whenever I walked past Mom, whenever she heard me moving through the house, whenever she sensed I might be going toward Dad's study, her footsteps followed, her eyes followed, her shadow followed. She didn't say anything directly, but her presence lingered behind me like a warning or a threat. I couldn't open the box near her. I couldn't even risk going into the study when she was awake. So I waited, and waited, and waited, until the perfect moment came. It happened on the 4th night. Mom took her pills, the ones for her blood pressure, and went to bed earlier than usual. I listened carefully from my room as her footsteps moved down the hallway, then stopped. Her bedroom door closed. Silence. Then the familiar click of her bedside lamp turning off. I waited. 10 minutes, 20, 30. The house grew still. I stepped out of my room as quietly as I could. The floor creaked underneath me like it was warning her. I froze, but nothing happened. Finally, I reached the study. I closed the door behind me and locked it. My hands were already shaking before I even knelt to pull the wooden box out from under the desk. I placed it carefully on the floor, fingers trembling. I lifted the lid. The photograph was still there. The drawing was still there. The faintly carved name was still there. But now I noticed something else. At the bottom, hidden beneath the velvet lining, was a thin piece of taped paper. A secret compartment. My heartbeat quickened. I peeled the tape away and lifted the lining. Under it was a folded letter. Old. Yellow around the edges. Soft from age. Fragile. My breath froze in my chest. I held it up to the lamp and saw the writing clearly for the first time. To my daughter. My throat closed. My legs almost gave out. This was from her. From Lily. With shaking hands, I unfolded the letter, and I began to read. My little girl, if this letter finds you, it means the world didn't give me the chance to raise you myself. I'm sorry for that. More sorry than any mother has ever been. I closed my eyes, tears already burning behind them. I fought for you. I tried harder than anyone knows. But the people around us, they believed they knew better than I did. My heart pounded. I wasn't perfect. I made mistakes. But I loved you fiercely. A tear slipped down my cheek. Your father, not the man raising you now, the man who gave you life with me, he wanted to raise you. He wanted you more than anything, but someone else took that choice away. Mom. She had to be talking about Mom. I kept reading. If you ever wonder why we didn't keep you, why you grew up somewhere else. The next line felt like a knife. Ask the woman who took you when I wasn't looking. My entire body went cold. It was her. Mom wasn't chosen. She wasn't assigned. She took me. And Dad, my real father, had tried to stop it. I pressed the letter against my forehead, my chest heaving. Then I read the final lines. If you are reading this, it means I didn't survive long enough to come back for you. But I wanted you. I wanted you more than anyone ever could. Don't believe anyone who tells you otherwise, especially her. I lowered the letter slowly. My heart was pounding so violently I could hear it in my ears. Lily, my mother, she had written this for me. She had known, she had tried, and Mom, the woman in the next room, had kept this truth from me for my entire life. I was still holding the letter when I heard it, a creak. Not from the house settling, from the hallway. Then another, and another. Slow footsteps, soft, too soft. Mom, she was awake. I shoved the letter back under the lining, closed the box, and slid it under the desk just as the doorknob turned. The lock rattled loudly. Open the door, Mom said from outside. I froze. Her voice wasn't tired. It wasn't groggy. She sounded wide awake and angry. I swallowed hard. I'm just... Open the door. I hesitated, and that hesitation told her exactly she needed to know. Open the door right now. She repeated, the calmness in her tone far more frightening than if she'd screamed. Slowly, I stood up and unlocked it. The door swung open fast. Mom stood there, her eyes sharp, cold, dark. What are you doing? She asked. I stayed silent. She looked past me, into the study, then at the floor, and her eyes narrowed. You took something,
she whispered. I didn't answer. You went through his things. I stepped back. Her expression wasn't sadness. It wasn't grief. It was anger. Pure, protective anger. Not protecting me, protecting the secret. Give me what you found, she said. Her eyes flicked toward the desk, and that was her mistake, because now I knew she knew exactly what was inside the box. I forced my voice not to shake. There was a letter, I whispered. Her face drained of color. No, she said quickly. There was no letter. You're imagining things. She stepped toward me. I stepped back. Give me the letter. There it was, the truth behind her eyes. Fear. Real fear. Fear of losing control. Fear of being exposed. Fear of the truth I now held in my hands. The truth Lily wrote. My voice trembled. Who is Lily? She froze. Her mouth opened, a broken, jagged sound escaping.
Where did you hear that name? She whispered. Dad's box. Her jaw clenched so hard I saw the muscle twitch. You weren't supposed to see that. So you do know her. She shut her eyes painfully for a long second before whispering, She wasn't your mother. Then who was she? No one. Then why was her name in Dad's things? She didn't answer. Why was there a letter from her? Another silence. Why did Dad warn me about you? Her eyes snapped open. Something dark flashed inside them. You don't understand what you're doing, she whispered. Then explain. I can't, she screamed. The sound broke in her throat. Then she lowered her voice to a trembling whisper. I can't lose you. Lose me? Lose me? That was the moment I realized something truly terrifying. Her fear wasn't about the truth. Her fear was about me leaving. Me finding the real story. Me discovering who I was. Me seeing the woman she really was. Her fear was losing control of the life she carefully curated for 21 years. I stepped away from her, my voice barely audible. What did you do, Mom? Tears actually filled her eyes now, but not the warm kind. These were tears of panic, desperation. I did what I had to. For who? For us. My heartbeat thundered. There is no us, I said quietly, if it was all a lie. She shook her head violently. No, I loved you. I raised you. I protected you. Protected me from what? She closed her eyes tightly. You weren't supposed to know. Know what? Her next words shattered everything. That she wanted you back. My breath vanished. Lily came for you. Your real mother came back, but I couldn't let her take you. I staggered back, like she had hit me. You took me, I whispered. You took me from her. She was unstable, Mom cried. She was sick. She wasn't fit to raise a child. She was my mother, I said, my voice breaking. Mom covered her mouth with her shaking hands. You were mine, she screamed. I made you mine. The world spun. My lungs felt tight, my legs weak. In the middle of the spinning world, one truth rose above the noise. Dad warned me, and he warned me too late. Mom placed a trembling hand on my shoulder. I can still fix this, she whispered. I shook my head. No, I said softly. You can't. She looked at me with horror. Don't walk away from me, she whispered. Don't you dare leave me. But the truth was no longer something I could ignore. I stepped back. Her hand slipped off my shoulder.
Her face fell like a collapsing wall, and for the first time in her life, she looked small, terrified, and utterly alone. I backed toward the door of the study. "Where are you going?" she whispered. I swallowed hard. "I'm going to find out who Lily was." Her lips parted. "No, no, please, listen to me." But I didn't, because the truth was finally within reach, and I was done living inside her lie. I stepped out of the room and walked down the hallway as she crumpled to the floor behind me, sobbing into her hands as the world she built began to collapse.
I walked out of the study with my mother's cries echoing behind me, but this time, I didn't turn back. For the first time in my life, I wasn't moving through the house like a daughter. I was moving like a stranger, searching for a truth she had been denied since birth. Mum kept calling my name from the study, shaky, desperate, broken, but her voice only pushed me further down the hallway. I stepped into my room and closed the door softly. I didn't lock it. I didn't need to. Mum wasn't coming for me. Not now. Not after everything she confessed. Her truth was bleeding out, and she didn't have the strength left to hide it anymore. I sat on the floor, heart pounding, and took the letter from under my shirt. Lily's letter, my real mother's voice from the grave. I opened it again, but this time, the words felt different. They didn't feel like a message. They felt like a door Dad wanted me to walk through before he died. A door Mum had been guarding for 21 years. A door I was finally strong enough to open. Mum didn't come out of her room all morning. I heard her moving sometimes, soft, slow steps, like she was pacing or sitting on the edge of her bed. But she didn't speak to me, not once. For the first time in my life, she didn't make breakfast. She didn't check on me. She didn't pretend to be fine. The house felt emptier than it ever had. Dad's absence was one thing, hers was another. What was worse, a home with two lies in it, or a home with one truth that broke everything? I sat at the kitchen table with Lily's letter in front of me, reading every line again and again. Her handwriting was soft, almost shaky, like she had written each word with more emotion than strength. Scattered across the kitchen counter were documents I had pulled out from Dad's old files. Hospital receipts, caseworker notes, adoption paperwork. Some of it was incomplete. Some of it didn't make sense. But they all pointed to one thing. Something went wrong during my adoption. Something Lily tried to stop. And Dad tried to protect me from the truth that would tear me apart. I picked up the photo again, the woman in the hospital hallway, crying, bruised around the eyes, holding nothing in her hands, because someone else was holding everything that mattered. Mum had said she wasn't my mother, but Lily's letter said otherwise, and only one of them had been lying for 21 years. That afternoon, I fell asleep on the couch with the letter on my chest. It wasn't peaceful sleep. It was the kind that pulls you under like a riptide. A dream, a memory, a feeling. I saw flashes, a hallway, bright lights, a woman reaching for me, crying, screaming something I didn't understand. Then another woman, Mom, pulling me away, holding me tight, running, running, running. I woke up gasping, heart slamming inside my chest. Sweat clung to my skin. My hands trembled. It wasn't a dream. It was a memory. A real one. I remembered Lily's face for a single second, but that second changed everything. I grabbed my phone and dialed the number I had found in Dad's file, the number of the hospital where he worked 21 years ago. A woman answered politely, "Records department. How can I help you?" My voice barely held steady. I'm looking for information about a woman named Lily. She gave birth here 21 years ago." There was silence. Then the woman said gently, "We don't release patient information to the public. This is about my mother, my biological mother." The woman's tone softened. "One moment, please." I waited through static and the ticking of the kitchen clock. When she returned, her voice was quieter. "We do have records of a woman named Lily who gave birth around that time." My chest tightened. Is she alive?" The woman paused. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. "She passed away shortly after giving birth." I closed my eyes. I knew it, but hearing it made it real. "There's something else," the woman continued. "When she was admitted, she insisted she did not want to give up her baby. She was very clear about that." My breath caught. "But the file says the child was transferred to another guardian under emergency circumstances." "Another guardian?" I whispered. "You mean my adoptive mom?" She hesitated. "The signature on the form, it wasn't the mother's." My stomach dropped. "It wasn't the doctor's either." "Then whose was it?" I whispered. There was a rustle, like papers shifting. Finally, she spoke. "It looks like the signature belonged to someone entirely different." "Who?" A long pause. "It belonged to your adoptive mother." I felt the world disappear around me. "I'm sorry," she added softly. "I wish I had more. These records are old and incomplete, but from what I can see, your biological mother never consented to giving you up." My breath shook. "Thank you," I whispered weakly. "Thank you so much." I hung up, then I burst into tears. I didn't cry like a broken girl. I cried like someone who finally understood the shape of the wound she carried. Lily didn't abandon me. Someone took me from her, and that someone was the woman sleeping down the hallway. It happened that evening. Mom came into the kitchen as I sat silently at the table, my eyes swollen, the documents spread out in front of me. She looked exhausted, older than she had ever looked. Her gaze flicked over the papers. She whispered, "You found more." I didn't answer. She sat down slowly across from me, folding her hands like someone who knew they were about to lose everything. "I want you to tell me the truth," I said softly. She closed her eyes. "What did you do to her?" My voice broke. "What did you do to Lily?" A tear slid down her cheek. "She was going to take you away," she whispered. "She was your mother," I cried. Mom shook her head violently. "She wasn't capable. She was young, she was alone, she was sick." "You took me," I screamed. "You stole me." Mom flinched, like the word had slapped her. "I saved you," she whispered. "You have no idea what her life was like. You have no idea what she could have put you through." "You don't know that," I sobbed. "You just wanted a child." She broke. Her face crumpled, her hands covered her mouth, and she cried harder than I had ever seen. "Yes," she whispered. "I wanted a child. I wanted you. I wanted someone to hold, someone to love." Her tears dripped onto the table. "And she walked away." "No," I whispered fiercely. "She came back. She came back for me." Mom froze. Her tears stopped, as if someone shut off a tap. "What?" "Lily came back," I said. "I saw the records. Dad tried to stop you. You took me before she could reach me." Mom covered her mouth, shaking violently. "I couldn't lose you." "You never had me," I said softly. That broke her. She collapsed forward, crying into her hands, whispering apologies that felt too small and too late. I let her cry, but I didn't comfort her. Some wounds don't get healed by touch. Some truths don't get softened by kindness. Some lines, once crossed, can never be uncrossed. A week later, I stood in front of the small cemetery the hospital records had led me to. The wind was gentle, cold, carrying the kind of quiet that feels like respect. Her grave was small, simple, just her name, just Lily. I knelt beside it, tracing the carved letters with trembling fingers, and then I took out the letter, the one she wrote, with what little strength she had left. "I found you," I whispered. "I found the truth." A tear fell onto the paper. "I'm sorry it took so long." The wind blew softly across my cheek, like someone touching me for the first time. I closed my eyes and imagined her face, the woman in the photo, crying, reaching, loving. "I wish I could have known you. I wish you were here." I placed the letter on her grave and held it there for one long moment. But I kept a copy in my pocket, one I would never let go of. The truth belonged to me now. Not the lie I was raised on, not the story Mom repeated, not the silence Dad was forced to keep. My truth. My real truth. And that truth began with Lily. Later that night, I returned home. Mom wasn't in the kitchen. She wasn't in the living room. Her bedroom light was off. But the study door was open. Inside, on Dad's old desk, was a single envelope. My name, written in his handwriting. My breath caught as I opened it. Inside was a short note. Only one line. One sentence he must have written long before his last moments. "One day, you'll understand everything. And when you do, forgive yourself first." I pressed the note to my heart, tears falling freely. Dad didn't just warn me, he prepared me. He knew the truth would break me, but he also knew the truth would rebuild me. And as I stood in the quiet study, holding the final piece of the puzzle of my life, I finally understood something. I wasn't stolen. I wasn't abandoned. I wasn't unwanted. I was loved by the woman who gave me life, by the man who raised me, and maybe, in her own broken way, even by the woman who couldn't let me go. My story didn't start with a lie. It started with love. Flawed, complicated, painful, but love. And now, for the first time in my life, I knew exactly who I was.